Throughout my life, I've never really had many friends. I mean, yeah, I was very popular in elementary school, but that was like 6 years ago. Since then, I've never had much friends. I honestly don't know why. However, the friends I do have, though, I'd say I'm pretty loyal to them. But I've never talked about my best friend. His name is Floppy. So today, I'm going to talk about Floppy. I'm Zach, and this is Storytime 14 on April 2nd, 2021. So, who is Floppy? Well, first off, he is not a human, he's a cat. His date of birth is unknown, but I predicted that it'd be April 2nd, 2020, meaning it's his first birthday. That's why I decided to do today's story time on him. The story of how we met him and how he grew is a very fascinating one, so I'll be discussing that. But before I can discuss that, I have to discuss the backstory. Anyways, onwards. So throughout most of my life, I've lived with dogs, specifically German Shepherds. Now, as you probably can tell, I'm not a dog person, I'm a cat person. So overall, I never really had much of a relationship with the dogs. They've mostly been there really just to be there. I of course loved them, but I never spent a lot of time with them. The last dog we had was put down in December of 2018. Afterwards, we didn't have any pets for another year and a half. So now we reach March of 2020. This month was very infamous for the rise in the coronavirus pandemic. As a result, we had to do online school and my parents had to do work from home. This is how it worked for the rest of the school year, which, by the way, I was a sophomore. Anyways, around early April, we started noticing a cat walk across our property. Of course, our yard was safe for cats to roam around, since we didn't have any dogs. This cat in particular was rather young, maybe about 1.5 to 2 years old. Mom kind of felt sorry for this cat, so she fed her. And I think you know what happens. This cat stayed in our yard and came around every day, and we fed her. We decided to call this cat Smokette. While Smokette was never a pet, we still fed and watered her. Then, around mid-April, we noticed something strange. Smokette was not the only cat in our yard. No, there were also 2 little kittens in our yard that happened to be hers. We studied the behavior of these kittens. We noticed one was a male and the other was a female. We also gave them names based on their traits. We named the female Twinkle due to her fur color looking like Twinkle. Her fur color looking like twinkle stars, while we named the male Floppy because he often flopped around when he walked. Pay attention to Floppy, as he's the main character here. We also gave Smokette extra food so that she could feed these kittens. So a couple weeks pass, we keep feeding and watering Smokette and the kittens. However, in late April, we notice a very odd odor outside. We then followed the smell, and we see Twinkle dead. She was covered in blood and unresponsive. Smokette was not to be found, probably because she was trying to protect Floppy. We think that a predator cat, possibly the father, killed Twinkle, but we don't know for sure. Then we reached the first day of May. This was a rather eventful day regarding cats. So that night, my parents were sitting on the front porch when suddenly they saw Smokette. She seemed to make a signal saying come on, so my parents followed her. Then they found Floppy. My dad then grabbed Floppy and my mom got a towel to wrap him in. If you're wondering where I was in the office doing schoolwork. But I do remember while doing schoolwork, Mom came into the office holding Floppy. He was wrapped up in a towel, and he also looked so scared. I wanted to pet him, but I was a little concerned about him biting me, but I ultimately petted him. I rubbed his head. He seemed to really like that, although it was simply because he was so frightened. Afterwards, we took Floppy down to my grandmother's house. The reason we did this was because my grandmother knows basically everything about cats, since she once had a cat. We then gave water, as well as some tuna to Floppy. Later on, we discovered that tuna fish is his favorite food. We also got a laundry basket to place him in. He was unable to climb out of it, so it worked really well, so we slept down there for the night. That morning, I woke up and went over to my grandmother's house to see Floppy. He was still very frightened and tired, therefore, he couldn't really do anything, even if he tried. I picked him up and held him for the first time. It was really cool. Later that afternoon, we brought Floppy down to our screen porch, where he would be safe. We also tried to get Smokette to come in with him, but she didn't want to, so we let Floppy live over on the screen porch that night. In fact, that's actually where he lives to this day. We do this because my parents don't want an animal to live inside, so he just stays outside. He could sleep on the cushion chairs for now, so he's settled. And we'd get him a cat bed in about a week. So for the rest of May, nothing really big happened. However, we would discover that Smokette was pregnant with another litter. I also would begin taking pictures of Floppy and posting them. I don't post pictures of him anymore, but I still take pictures of him. Around early June, I'd say Floppy began to start really liking me. It made sense. I wasn't ever away from home, and I probably spent most time with him. He also started to really like the rest of the family, too. Now let's move back to Smokette. So around mid-June, she gave birth to those kittens. Now something to note is that Smokette hated humans. She never let any of us touch her, even though she's seen us touch Floppy. but when she was giving birth, she actually let me and the rest of the family pet her. So that was very interesting. Anyways, she gave birth to 5 kittens. At this point, we were very concerned about the amount of cats in our yard. We already had taken one as a pet. After a while, we were able, and we didn't want any more, so we let Smokey take care of our kittens. After a while, though, we were able to get Smokey in a transportable cage and took her over to a very wealthy neighborhood by a lake. But now we have 4 kittens. One of the kittens died, so we don't know how. That's why we're stuck with 4 now. But we took the kittens to an animal shelter. We don't know where the kittens are now, but more than likely all of them have already been adopted. So throughout mid-June and early July, I continued posting pictures of Floppy on Instagram, and he grew quite a lot. When we took him in, Floppy was extremely small. While he was still small in July, he was much bigger, so it was really cool seeing him grow. Now we reached mid-July of 2020. We went on a mostly annual beach trip to North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I say mostly, as we didn't go here in 2019, as my sister had a cheer camp to attend. While it might sound controversial going on a beach trip during a pandemic, we still did it. What are you going to do, cry about it? But anyways, this would be the first time we'd be away from Floppy for not just an entire week, but for also just a single day. Since we never left Floppy before, throughout the trip, my grandmother took care of him, so he was getting food, water, and attention. She adores him, so we got a ton of attention, as well as a ton of tuna fish while we were gone. Floppy really missed us, and he was extremely thrilled when we got home a week later. I also missed Floppy while down there, so it was really great getting to be with him again. Now, nothing major really happened throughout the rest of July, so how about we move on to mid-August? This would be when we went back to school, when I began the 11th grade. It was extremely relieving, considering we had not been to school since March. So how this worked was that our school was split up into 2 cohorts. I was cohort A, same with my sister. This meant we both went to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then we learned from home Wednesday through Friday. So how does this tie into Floppy? Well, for 2 days of the week, we were not going to be with Floppy all day. Floppy is not alone at home, though. My dad still worked from home, so he often plays with Floppy when he's on his break. Now let's move on to a month later, to a major event in Floppy's life. So in mid-September, Floppy got neutered. The reason we did this was to make sure Floppy was not out impregnating any female cats, as well as to make sure he wouldn't run away. Me and my sister drove him up to the vet that day, and he got neutered. We also picked him up. When we picked him up, he was extremely pissed and he hissed at us. However, my sister bought some treats for him and fed him some while I was driving us home. That cheered him up then, and he stopped hissing at us. And he also stopped whining at us. He stopped getting angry at us. He was more kind of whining at us. So that's kind of expected. We then got back home. We set everything in my room, as this would be the first time Floppy slept in my room. Now, he could barely walk, so we mostly just spent the next 24 hours on my bed asleep. The next night, he spent the night in my sister's bedroom. Finally, he would sleep back on the porch since he was much stronger now. So Floppy got neutered on a Wednesday. On that Saturday, we decided to let him outside and run free. We of course watched his every move, but it was still a really magical experience for him, getting to roam around free for an hour or 2. We now let him out every day. So let's fast forward to early October. So we let him out, but when I was going to bring him back in, he really didn't want to go. So he basically put me on a chase. He's really fast, so he outsped me and ended up getting into a tree. Yup, he got stuck in a tree. He wasn't too high though, so we got a ladder and got him back down. This would be the first of many times he'd get stuck in a tree, and I'll mention the other times when we get there. So throughout November and most of December, Floppy really didn't do too much. However, the day after Christmas, me, my sister, and my dad went on a trip to visit family in Delaware. My mom stayed home since she really didn't want to go. Therefore, we didn't see Floppy for about 3 days, but afterwards, Floppy was once again relieved to see us again, and so were we. Mom, of course, took care of Floppy while we were gone. So now I want to jump to January 2nd, 2021. So we were outside taking down the Christmas lights, and we let Floppy run around. However, Floppy was running, and I decided to play with him a little. But once again, I got him stuck in another tree. However, we decided to just let him stay out there while we worked on the lights. He eventually came down later on that day. Now let's jump all the way to early March of 2021. Since January and February were overall uneventful months for Floppy, so in early March, Floppy got stuck up in another tree. This time though, he was extremely high up. Not even a ladder could reach him. He was up there for about 2 nights. The final day he was up there, we managed to get him back down by poking him off the tree and having him fall into a basket. He was pretty exhausted, but not too exhausted. He still had energy, maybe enough energy to climb another tree. That's exactly what this resilient cat did. Just 2 weeks later, he got stuck in another tree. Fortunately, it was only for a night. While we were at the church, he managed to get back down, so now he was climbing a bunch of trees. We at least knew he was capable of getting down, though. It wouldn't be too long until this idea was put to the test a couple days later. Yep, you guessed it, he got stuck in another tree. This time, though, it was even higher than the one earlier. He ended up getting himself down from his tree, but it took him 4 nights. What happened when he got down, though, was quite interesting. So I was doing schoolwork in the office, and our office has a door that leads out to the pool. It has a wooden porch with it. I then saw Floppy on the wooden porch. I let him in, fed him, and gave him some warm water. However, he didn't really seem interested in eating or drinking. He could barely walk, so I picked him up and put him on my bed. He slept there for the rest of the day. He also slept there that night. Next day, he could move a little more, but he still had barely any energy. However, he didn't sleep in my bed that night. He actually was able to get at least, I can't read. Anyways, he was able to at least sleep in his kitty bed. He also ate and drank a bit more. Finally, the next night, he was still a bit out of energy, but he still managed to get outside. So he slept on the screen porch as usual. What's really interesting about this whole situation, about the last tree that he got stuck in, was that he got down just last week. He hasn't got stuck in any single tree since, although that's only because he's only been outside once. I should also note that yes, he's back at full energy and is running around like he normally does. Now, one thing I want to mention about Floppy is that last Sunday, being March 28th, 2021, we got him a collar. He got used to it, but when he first had it on, he literally started flopping around like he did when he was only a month old. It was really hilarious, but also kind of sad. That poor cat. Oh well, he's gonna get used to it. Well, he's already used to it. Now we reach the present day Floppy. As mentioned earlier, Floppy turns a year old today, but what will the future hold for him? By the time this video is released, as I'm recording this video on Thursday, April 1st, my uncle and his kids from Delaware should be at our house. This will be the first time they see Floppy. However, they will also be bringing their dog. They could not find anyone to take care of their dog while they were away, so they had to bring her to our house. I'm not sure how Floppy is going to adapt to her, since he hates dogs, why he climbs so much trees. What will probably happen though is that Floppy will either stay on the porch the entire time, or he will just simply live out inside, while the dog has everything outside. More than likely, Floppy will just sleep inside, since he does not want anything to do with that dog. Now let's take a leap from tomorrow to about 9 months. So I'm going to be graduating both high school and college early. This December, I will be receiving my high school diploma and my associate's degree in science. This means that in January of 2022, I'll be going off to college. Currently, I have about 5 colleges in mind. 2 of them would require me to live on campus, while the other 3 I could just commute. My top pick would require me to live on campus. If I get accepted there, that means Floppy will be without me for a while. I know he'll definitely miss me. Fortunately though, my sister will still be in school. She will be a freshman when I begin college, and she will be a junior when I graduate college. Therefore, Floppy still has her, as well as my parents and grandmother. He won't have his favorite all of the time. Not only that, but I'm gonna miss him a lot too. If I don't commute. Now, I want to jump from 9 months all the way to about 5 to 6 years, so I predict I'll move away from home when I'm about 21 or 22. I'm 16 right now. However, when I move out, I won't be the only one moving out. Floppy will be moving away with me. When he moves away with me, he'll be a completely indoor cat. So overall, I think Floppy's got a great life ahead of him. So that's all I got for today's story time. Floppy has had a crazy life so far, and it's crazy knowing today he turns 1 year old. Next week, I'm going to be talking about my 7th grade school year. Anyways, that's all I got for story time, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!